Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 170 of the Citrix Session. I'm your host today, Bill Sutton. I have with me a couple of folks from Citrix, as well as the Chief Enthusiasm Officer of XenTegra, Andy Whiteside. Andy, you want to say hello?
Hello, and I'm shocked that this is 170, which is a pleasantly good surprise. Bill, I can't believe we've done this many of these.
Yep, I know. It's actually been a couple of months since we were able to do one because of varying schedule conflicts and me being away and others being away. So I'm glad we're back in the swing of things just in time for Christmas.
Hey, Bill,
Uh,
why were we away? Well, part of the reason we were away because we were at Microsoft Ignite, which
right.
if you didn't go and you're listening to this, you need to reach out to us. We've got free passes or very heavily discounted passes. I was at AWS reInvent last week. There weren't nearly enough of our people there on the end user compute side. So just kind of a brief commercial about the way we reinvest in our customers and get them to conferences, and what better place to go have a good time and learn.
Absolutely. Yeah, Ignite was a good time, but also a lot of learning that occurred there. And we're putting together, as another advertisement, putting together a webinar probably in the next week or two to cover some of the updates that happened at Ignite, both on the Microsoft side and end user computing and others.
It's funny. I went to Amazon. What is Amazon's called again?
reInvent.
Amazon reInvent. That's right. I did that one a few years ago when it was in Atlanta, and I can remember being feeling so useless because I'm used to folks coming into the Citrix booth and wanting to talk about DAS or end user compute or something like that. And holy smokes, most of the folks that came to the booth were wanting to know about Netscaler. What are we doing from a networking perspective? What's the cloud native approach? How do we do this? How do we do that? And I'm like, oh wow,
Yeah.
there's this whole other world that maybe I should look into. It was fascinating.
The amount of services offered through AWS and growing is just unbelievable.
It's amazing.
Possible to keep up with.
Yep. And that earlier voice was the voice of Jeremy Myers from Citrix. Jeremy, thanks for joining us today.
You're welcome. That was my way of ninja in.
That's
hard
right.
to say.
That's right.
Is that a verb?
Something like that. And then also we have Todd Smith from Citrix as well. Todd, say hello.
Hey there. Bill, it was great to see you a couple of weeks ago in Washington, D.C. for the Citrix Connect event.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was a really good event for sure. All right, so today we're going to do this blog entitled Improve Security, Admin Interfaces, and User Experiences Across the Citrix Solution Portfolio. It was written by Emma Bland. This is a pretty long one, so we may end up doing a two-parter here, which is fine. So starting off, this is focused on admin interfaces, like the title says, and user experiences, et cetera, but also includes some other nuggets in here. So which one of you guys wants to kick this one off?
Well, let's start here. It doesn't necessarily cover this, but we do have a new current release that was released. So the
That's right.
2411, it gets an honorable mention right out of the gate.
It does.
So if you are a current release customer, this is available in the download portal.
Yes, it is. And I think a lot of the features that are in here are related to 2411, but not exclusive to 2411. Right, Todd?
That's correct. I think what you've seen over the past year and a half to year has been we've been playing catch up on a lot of technical debt reduction. So we've seen a lot of new features being dropped into the current release cycle and not just having to wait until the LTSR comes out. So there's a ton of goodness that's coming out, and it's not only for the users, it's for the admins, and it's across all of our different products. So in the past, it was typically you'd get a Netscaler update, or you would get a Xen server update, or a virtual app and virtual desktop update. We're adding a lot into these updates, and I think there's going to be some we're going to reference a lot of these things in this conversation.
Yep, that's right. So first off, there were some new entitlements or announcements made at Ignite a couple of weeks ago on November 19th. Jeremy, you want to talk about the first one?
So the first one actually surprised me a bit because this is something that I actually thought we had in the product 12 months ago, right? So we had been talking about the integration between Windows 365 and Citrix for some time now. So keep me honest, Todd. Did this ever go GA, or is this only a part of the HDX for Citrix Experience?
It was really focused on the HDX for Citrix
Okay.
Experience. It was a separate line item, separate SKU that customers had to order or acquire. This is a game changer because it really says if you're entitled to the Citrix virtual app and desktop through our universal hybrid multi-cloud licensing, you had access or platform license. You had access to all of these new features, specifically integrating with Windows 365.
Now, if I understood correctly, it is not just CPL, the Citrix platform license. It is not just the universal hybrid multi-cloud license. It's not CPC, so the private cloud license, simply because that doesn't support deploying, managing anything out of the cloud,
Right.
Or public cloud. But I think it does include DAS and any of the legacy universal licenses as well. So this is different. A lot of folks we've had this conversation quite a bit, especially as it comes to some of the Netscaler entitlements. There's a lot bundled into, like, say, a UHMC or a CPL license, but this is something that you get, and not just this, but the next one down that's in this blog post is also Uber Agent as well, as we're adding Uber Agent as an entitlement to not only CPL only before. Now it's the universal hybrid multi-cloud. Now it's DAS, any flavor of DAS, any flavor of universal, any flavor of workspace service. So if you've got any of the cloud services from a DAS perspective, you get both of these entitlements. The big thing with Windows 365, and this is crazy, unlimited use.
Yep, unlimited use. That's the key thing. Yep.
Yeah.
So you can leverage Citrix DAS or any flavor thereof to manage an unlimited number of paid-for cloud PCs using Windows 365.
So let's revisit that real quick. Cloud PC is a dedicated desktop,
right,
hosted in Microsoft Azure. So it's an entitlement of your Windows 365, M365 license. Could either you or Andy maybe get the Microsoft licensing straight on that? Like, how do I get a cloud PC?
You pay for it per user per month. It's not an entitlement. Per se.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can definitely, it definitely comes close to being like you use it with the Windows 360, or excuse me, M365.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You have like the VDA, the things that come with AVD, but Windows 365 is a separate pay for that PC monthly, depending on which PC you get offering.
But it's an unlimited thing. So it's like a persistent desktop, and for whatever the payment is per user per month, you can use it 8 hours a day or 24 hours a day. I mean, it's always on, always available. Maybe not always on, but always available.
Oh, it's
I'm getting a Windows license, and I'm getting committed Azure consumption, all you can eat. I'm not having to dial that up, dial it down. Got it. Okay.
It's basically lift and shift your physical PC into the cloud, and you pay a premium for it, but it's there. It's always there. It's always on. In theory, maybe there are snapshots that you could revert it back to. Maybe, Bill, do you know if you can snapshot it?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, so it's not non-persistent, but you could revert it back, the power of virtualization.
So the idea here is you get unlimited integration with Cloud PC and Citrix DAS platform, regardless of how you get it. But of course, when you do that, you get a lot of other things too, right? So, honestly, under the hood, it's like remote PC into a dedicated desktop, right? It just happens to be Cloud PC, but that unlocks things like, any observability. It unlocks session recording. It unlocks, we get a lot of customers who are using, they're not using Entra ID for their authentication. They might be using an Okta or something else, SAML based or whatever, but that integrates into this as well.
The number one thing you get is the world's leading, connection protocol.
Absolutely.
Right. Like I literally on the way to way to AWS, I talked to a guy who'd moved from Citrix to AVD, and I used my virtual desktop the entire flight. A little bit of hiccups when we lost connectivity along the way, but for the most part, the entire flight. And I'm like punching him like, can you do this with your protocol? And he's like, no, I wouldn't even begin to use that on the plane. But now with Windows 365 and Citrix, you can do it.
Right. Yep. You're getting all the HDX goodness is what you're getting.
Perfect.
Basically. And historically, this was an entitlement of universal hybrid multi-cloud in the platform, and then the platform license. You got the ability to connect to Windows 365 PCs. Basically, what they did was extended that to the older DAS products and made it unlimited in terms of the number of Windows PCs you can connect, or Windows 365 PCs you can connect to, cloud PCs. And then, of course, you touched, Jeremy, on Uber Agent. Maybe give a kind of a high-level overview of what Uber Agent is for our listeners.
Sure. So Uber Agent is an observability platform that's actually pretty dang granular, right? So, for a lot of customers who are using this, it's very much, a piece of it is very much Citrix focused, but there is a line of sight outside of the Citrix environment as well. So a lot of customers are using it to not only monitor the VDAs, they're monitoring some of the Citrix components, storefront, the database servers, those pieces as well.
This is Citrix Dex offering, right? Digital experience.
Yeah, correct.
Monitoring.
Correct. Right. So at the end of the day, you're also hoping to gather some statistics off the endpoints as well, right? So I'd love to know, in addition to what the VDA is seeing, is what the endpoint seeing, right? So I can tie this in with, my endpoint connecting from to a Citrix session. Now, what's interesting is we have opened this thing up. So Uber Agent traditionally was a solution you only got with our platform license, right? So what we're doing here, and this is very subtle here as well, is you can deploy Uber Agent for any of your Citrix components, including the endpoints that are running a Citrix client with a UHMC license, a DAS license, so any of the DAS services you can deploy this with. The only difference between what you get with those entitlements and CPL is I can also monitor components outside of Citrix as well, if I have a CPL, right? So
if you have CPL, yeah.
Correct.
Platform license.
So this is interesting. I'd love to get your take. So, I haven't had a chance to chat with Bill about this, just yet. But, listen, historically, XenTegra was an Uber Agent partner. Can you provide just your own perspective on how you guys are leveraging this and working with Uber Agent with your customers, or at least internally?
Yeah, I should probably do that. So we weren't just an Uber, we were the Uber Agent partner. There's only a handful in the country prior to the Citrix acquisition. In fact, from a business perspective, Citrix buying Uber Agent was devastating to us because people that used to buy it from us now got it for free. Not bitter, just reality. But nonetheless, we were huge advocates of Helgi and those guys on the Uber Agent side, specifically for the hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of Citrix users we were hosting. Thousands at the time that we were hosting those workloads, and Uber Agent was the best way to monitor those users in that Citrix environment.
Love it.
Yep.
I'll give you one great use case. We were able to determine what users were using what websites and how long, and all that browser consumption. I mean, I'm a virtual desktop user on a daily basis. The number one thing I do that drives my virtual desktop and my virtual desktop team crazy is open up like 30 browser tabs and go all kinds of places and just leave them open. That was one use case where we found it extremely valuable.
Yeah.
Now, at that time, we weren't using it, and I think this is the big announcement. We weren't using it across the asynchronous solution where the endpoints weren't in play. Now, because it's kind of unlimited for those Citrix customers, not only do you have the ability to use it for the Citrix sessions, you can use it for the endpoints. And Jeremy, I think that's whether they're accessing Citrix or not, isn't it?
So if you're a UHMC license holder, if you're a DAS license holder, if you don't have a CPL, it's only for Citrix pieces as well as the endpoints connecting via Citrix. Now, if you want to monitor outside of that, then that would be the CPL. But I think for most customers, it's a great value add, even from UHMC.
We have a couple of large customers that are really interested in monitoring all the endpoints in addition to those that are connected to Citrix. So those are obviously Citrix platform license customers.
Correct.
And I think this is also a space where IT is really moving more and more towards fire prevention as opposed to fire suppression.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is if the help desk and the engineering team has visibility into a problem before the user can really detect that there's a problem, they're winning that game. Uber Agent is certainly one of those tools that's going to help them better prevent issues before they become problems. And that visibility piece of it is absolutely critical. And being able to do that in a lightweight manner is also critical, right? You don't want to have, I was talking with a customer last week that they have 13 agents that they put on an endpoint, prior to them making a connection to a virtual desktop. And then within the virtual desktop, they have about a dozen or so additional agents. So by the time you look at us, almost half of the resources are being consumed by these little agents that are doing nothing but collecting data. And that's not including the back end costs on the data that's being collected, right? So, having it be lightweight, having it be unobtrusive, having it be always available are critical things.
Yeah, for sure. When we were at Connect a couple of weeks ago, Todd, they talked about, the person presenting on this talked about how lightweight it is, and it's really just a under 10%, I think, or less CPU utilization on the endpoint, and it collects the data very granularly. I believe it sends it up, or at least collects it in 3-second increments. Is that what I remember? Yeah.
Yep.
So you're getting almost real time. It's not like it's batching it every 5 minutes.
Correct.
And sending it up. It may be batching it to get it to the Uber agent console, but it's collecting the data every 3 seconds, and that's pretty darn granular when you think about it.
Yep.
All right. Any other closing comments on Windows 365 or Uber agent before we move forward, guys?
Nope.
Okay.
No.
So earlier, I don't know which one of you guys, I think it was Todd, but I could be wrong. Correct me if I am. We're talking about how Citrix has been iterating significantly this year in adding new features and functionality. I would argue that it's iterated more frequently and faster than I've ever seen Citrix iterate, particularly on features that may not be like, grandiose, brand new ways of working and that sort of thing, but incremental type of things like what we're going to talk about now. For example, new platform UI. I remember when we went from the old XenApp console to the MMC-based console, and now we move from the MMC-based console to the web console. And not long after that, now we're talking about a completely new UI to help make it more streamlined for administrators, a better look and feel, and other elements. One of you guys want to talk about this UI, this new UI?
Yeah, I think I'll take a shot at this.
Okay.
And that is, when you looked at what we were doing with the old web studio and the web consoles and compare that with the MMC, right? And it really is geared more and more towards thinking about or presenting the data, presenting the commands and the control features in a way that it's actually useful. And it kind of goes through the cognitive process of how someone onboards a user, makes a change or modification, or goes through some type of changes in the environment, right? Without having to, do the old click on an icon and see if that's the one that you're looking for, right? So there's a lot more automation. There's a lot more, is the data that's being presented in the console relevant to what I need to do, and being able to drill down as opposed to open up a whole nother tab to be able to find that information. So there's been a lot of shifts in our design philosophy around things like consoles and user interfaces in general, which has really been kind of adapting towards the way a lot of the other, a lot of the consumers of the data and consumers of the services are actually looking for. And we talk to a lot of customers about, what needs to be changed and what the ideas are. I think a lot of our development, a lot of our changes and our technical debt reduction, the majority of the enhancements that are being done based on customer requests. So when someone from Citrix basically says, "Hey, we're gonna put in a request for enhancement based on a customer need," that shows that we're listening to the customers, and we're actually importing or taking a lot of their ideas and putting them into the product.
Hey, Todd, can I call something out on that real quick?
Sure.
It's also just the reality of the fact that companies like Citrix that hold a higher strategic position in an organization than other vendors has the opportunity to collapse technologies into their stack to remove the vendor sprawl that goes across and be a more strategic vendor for that customer for a longer period of time.
Yeah.
That's the business side of this.
Yep.
I don't know that everybody understands, guys, this is a business. It's not all about, tech. We got to find ways to make the tech that we're already investing in more valuable.
Yeah, it's ironic that you're talking about that because I just listened to an audiobook over the weekend where it was talking about, defining and reimagining business value, right? And it was described as it's not a science, it's an art form. And the art form is, how do I take something that someone wants versus something that they need? And how when you get value when you marry those two together,
Yeah.
because reducing technical debt, that tends to be very focused on what someone wants versus the dollars associated with that is what someone needs. And being
Yeah.
able to marry those two together is absolutely critical. And I think we found the right sweet spot here in a lot of the things that we're doing, where we are reducing our debt, but we're also adding value at the same time.
Yeah, it sounds like the Microsoft playbook for all these years, right? They've been finding ways to give you enough of what you need under one license model that you might reconsider all the other money you spend somewhere else.
Yeah.
And this monitoring thing, did I say edge site? This monitoring concept's been around for a long time and it's been needed to work. So something you want is a monitoring tool that works, and now it's cost effective because it's included.
Right.
Everybody that's a Citrix shop should take a look at whether this can do the job for them.
So since you brought up EdgeSite, Andy, EdgeSite was a phenomenal tool. It collected a lot of information. The problem with EdgeSite was that it didn't tell you what the information was. It didn't describe what the information was telling you. You still needed to have the Citrix Ninja to be able to go in and figure out what exactly is in the EdgeSite report that I need to pull out and then go make an adjustment. And it required you to know what adjustments needed to be made based on the information that EdgeSite was providing. It didn't have any capabilities around AI or machine learning, or even being able to accurately, or not accurately, efficiently describe what the actual problem is for someone who is not at that ninja level.
Yep. All right. The next topic is on multi-monitor enhancement. This is essentially what it looks like from reading through the blog. Is historically using multiple monitors is I know from experience. Sometimes it can be a challenge, particularly if you got more than two, or if you want certain things on certain monitors. Well, apparently now we have the ability to customize these settings and save them for a better experience. Do you guys have any experience with this or anything you'd like to add to that?
So I'll tell you, I don't have experience yet, but where this comes from is, the Northeast, we have a lot of financial services customers.
Yes.
And they have a lot of monitors. They need to, in fact, 6 to 8 is not unusual, right? Just based on the amount of things they have to have open. And, just in the spirit of what Todd said, in terms of RFEs, feedback from the customer, like this is one of the, but believe it or not, this is one of the most killer apps when it comes to Citrix, and there's HDX and the ability to save, a handful of minutes just rearranging a screen when you reconnect. Like, I don't want to downplay that, but that's a really big deal. And so this is from a user experience perspective. And this started as an RFP or an RFE that came in from more than one customer. And, this is where we can go back to the customer and go, hey, this is just not product management imagining what's good for the customer. This is feedback from the customer. They hop on with these customers, product management does, to understand exactly what those requirements are. Listen, what do you need? How do we make this better? Boom, this is what we're looking for. And this is an example of making that into the product.
And I think, as we look back at those RFEs that came in, number one, it was enhancing a user experience. And number two is they were able to actually calculate how much time each day it took for someone when they went into a different desk, because a lot of this came out with the whole concept around global free office or hot desking or whatever you wanted to call it, where you weren't assigned a physical location every single day. You just go to wherever the workstation was. And people were configuring, they were spending 5, 10, 15 minutes a day maneuvering their workspace so that they could now work efficiently. And it was really assigning your monitors to the right location inside your virtual desktop. The fact that we can now save this configuration so it follows the user wherever they are is huge. But not only does it follow the user, it actually detects when the physical configuration is different than what the virtual configuration is.
Oh, really?
That was a huge step forward.
Yeah. Because I know a few years ago, you guys might remember Citrix came out with the ability to be able to carve up those larger monitors
Yep.
where you could carve up and put two screens on like a 48-inch monitor or what have you. But this is different. This is actually allowing you to save the configuration of your physical monitor setup between. So when you roam, in a sense, or hotel, as you mentioned, you get the same monitors in the same content in the same place as you expect it to be. Very cool. The next topic is the new storefront UI. I think this is talking a little bit. They don't go into a lot of detail here, but I think this is referring to a lot to the activity manager and just the general changes that Citrix has made to the UI to give it a more modern look and make it easier to search and things like that. Any other thoughts or comments on this topic, guys?
But amazing timing for me. I literally just logged in for the second time today in my Citrix workspace. And as you're saying that, I noticed a little 3 boxes and the gear thing or whatever in the upper right-hand corner. And I was like, what is that? As you're explaining, I was like, oh, that's really valuable.
Yeah, I had that in my lab environment. I didn't have it turned on. I had to figure out how to turn it on at Connect, Todd, and I turned it on and was like, wow, this is essentially the ability for a user to see what applications or desktops they actually have running on the back end systems or in the cloud, and be able to switch between them or reconnect to certain ones that they may not realize they left open, etc. It's called Activity Manager, and if it's enabled, it's in the top right corner of your workspace app screen.
Which, by the way, this feels a lot like Connection Manager, if you remember that, but it was kind of hard to find and get to. You had to find the Citrix icon in the taskbar, and once you were in, you had to know what you were looking for. But love the idea that this is just baked right in the UI here. Much
and
easier
a lot
to
of
get
this,
to.
once again, this came out of an RFE that came in from the healthcare organizations that were out there, where you may be a doctor working at a physician's practice organization and have admitting rights at multiple hospitals. Well, if you're on a session, you're connecting to multiple environments at the same time. The user needs to have a little bit more information than what to them to see what else is connected, what's sitting out there that they no longer need to be connected to. And it solves a lot of problems around things like privacy, a lot of things around costing and cost management, as well as the underlying, where else am I connected to? Like Jeremy said, you don't have to go click on the system tray to figure out, what the connections are in there. It's right in the storefront itself.
Right.
With the UI.
Yeah. All right. The next section is called reducing operational complexity. First subset here is Netscaler zero touch certificate management. I think this is what it implies. Either of you have any more detail on that?
Well, let's just take a step back and say, if you are not using Netscaler console to manage your fleet of Netscalers,
yes,
you are missing out. So some of us have to do it because we are pooled capacity Netscaler customers, or now we're flex capacity. And of course, Netscaler console is how you manage that capacity amongst your fleet of Netscalers. But for a lot of us, and there are a tremendous number of customers out there that have fixed capacity Netscalers, meaning they can just install a license file on their Netscaler and just run that. Like, you don't need the Netscaler console. You're missing out. First of all, Netscaler console is something that you should have managing your Netscalers, if anything, for certificate management. So you've got one view across your entire fleet. You can see where all the certificates are in terms of expiration, which ones are live. I'll be honest, there's not a week or two that doesn't go by where I don't hear from a customer where the Netscaler went down simply because the cert expired. That wasn't that the Netscaler went down, it's just a VIP. The cert expired. It's just what we do. So this does two things. Number one, managing your Netscalers so you have visibility is one thing, but managing the certs themselves so they auto update the VIPs, I mean, that's a game changer. That is a game changer here. So that's what this piece is zero touch cert management. As long as you're updating and getting your certs into the cert manager, the process is super, super simple.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, Jeremy, because you've got a lot of situations where, the Netscalers maybe started off being managed by one team, and then another team takes over, or there's been a cert that was put on there temporarily that nobody knew it was going to expire. Having ability to graphically see that, and you know, just from a monthly check-in on, what certs do I have that are expiring this month. Not all of us have situations where we have a cert management program out there to actually do all of this, right? So this gives us the ability to have a lot more control over our environments, and eliminate those incidental downtime.
Yeah, we run into this a lot with customers, particularly that are doing a lot of different things on the Netscaler. Maybe they're doing more than just gateway. They're doing load balancing or SSL offload for other workloads. Maybe have multiple certificates, and the ability to manage these across different devices, different appliances, whether virtual or physical, from one console. You upload all your certs and your intermediates, and you link them, and then you just said, "Hey, go push these down," and it actually works. It's really a solid new option.
And I think that this is also an area where some of the IT auditing best practices that are out there, they're looking at, who's managing the certs, how frequently they get updated, who's actually updating those, how many devices have inaccurate or incorrect certs on them.
Right.
Those are all quick ways to fail an audit.
Yep.
And
missing intermediates that will affect user experience and so forth.
Correct. Especially where if you're making a connection and your connection sees that there's a cert on there, it's going to assume that connection is good. What happens if it's an inaccurate cert or an unauthorized cert that gets dropped on a device? Cert management is becoming much more of a critical step.
Yes. All right. The next one is one that we've been waiting for: Netscaler support for Nutanix. So when it comes to Netscaler VPX, most of the listeners probably know that you can install that today. There's VPX appliances for various hypervisors, XenServer, VMware, Hyper-V, KVM, and a lot of customers have taken the position that if they needed it on Nutanix, they just use the kernel-based virtual machine or KVM VPX. But I don't believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe that was supported.
Not officially.
Not officially. Now it's official it's in tech preview, but it's official with a actual VPX built for the Nutanix AHV hypervisor. So you would just simply import that into your AHV console and deploy it from there, similar to what you do in other hypervisors. You guys want to expound on that at all?
I mean, listen, I think you nailed it. This has been an ask for a long time. I would just say make sure you've got Netscaler console running so you can monitor it. Not required, but just a shameless plug.
No, but a valid shameless plug. The next one, Netscaler releases custom SNMP trap framework. I haven't dealt with SNMP traps for, gosh, I don't know how many years, way back. But this is still something that's used for monitoring and alerting. And do you guys have any insight into what the benefit of this is, other than what's written here?
Yeah, I think the big piece here is that almost every single vendor used to have their own management information block that went along with the SNMP traffic, right? So it was the ability to add in individual components or additional data fields into your MIB to make it a little bit more customized, right? And what this does is it allows you to add in additional events. The example that they used here is HSM related errors, so that can then be trigger something else out of your consumer of the SNMP trap, right? So a lot of folks are starting to do manage through some automation and orchestration tools that are out there. This gives you a little bit more visibility and the ability to improve the operation or streamline that operation.
Okay.
I just remember the days where everyone had public turned on as the default community string.
Yep.
You could map a network with no skill whatsoever.
Right.
Yeah, and it was amazing the amount of information you could glean just by putting an SMT sniffer out.
It was so unbelievable.
out on
Public
the wire.
read only, so much info. Yep.
Yeah. All right, the next one is general Zen server updates. A couple of these here. First, support for virtual machine anti-affinity rules. This is basically where let's say you're deploying an on-premise CVAT environment and you've got it running on Zen server. You don't want both delivery controllers running on one host. You don't want both storefront servers running on one host. And if there's a situation where a host goes down and they have to spin up on another host, you don't want to all of a sudden spinning up on the host with another one. Basically, that's what it means, right, guys?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. That would be bad.
Yeah.
As they said in Ghostbusters, don't cross the streams.
We've seen it. Oh, we've seen it even in VMware environments where it's just not turned on, and we'll get on an environment and say, why are both delivery controllers running on this host? Well, I didn't know that. They're not supposed to. Well, you need to turn anti-affinity on for them. So it's easy to forget about it, but it's critical to making sure you have the best optimal uptime. Another announcement is tech preview of Windows Server 2025 guest support on Zen Server. I know this for firsthand. I actually installed 2025 on my Zen Server lab a week or so ago, and with other than the TPM stuff, it worked pretty well. So any comments on that other than what's stated?
The only thing I'll point out is we officially support Server 2025 on CVAT 2407. So just kind of thinking why would you be running 2025? A lot of it's the VDAs, right? So I don't recall yet whether or not, we've gotten to the point where some of the other infrastructure supports it, but we have customers testing out VDAs, so listen, if you run a Zen server, this latest revision will have guest support, at least tech preview guest support, so you can start testing out your 2025 VDAs.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
All right, from the next category here is enhancing hardware and device security. The first item is Netscaler disk encryption. This is apparently focused on finance and government right now, or at least its references finance and government, to make sure that decommissioned devices don't have any sensitive data on them. And one way to do that is encryption. Any comments on this one?
Yeah, so actually, this is something that not only did it come out of the financial sector, but it also came out of the public sector as well.
Yeah.
In the whole the whole thought process here is if we write it to those two highly secure requirement-based industries, other industries will follow and they'll be able to do that, right? And the first thing is obviously encrypting the disks that are inside of the Netscalers, and be able to say, you know what, if it does get destroyed, we don't need to go and pull the drives out, or if the drives get compromised some way, there's no way you can actually read some of that content off of there. Because if you think about it, the amount of information that, especially the sensitive networking information that goes through any of these networking appliances that are out there, they really are the Rosetta Stones of a lot of organizations.
Cool. The next one is trigger-based scans from the device posture service. So the device posture service is running this. Keep me honest here, guys. This is the service that runs and monitors activity from a virtual desktop or a virtual connection, or the connection there too. And then apparently now it has the ability to look at triggers for certain activity and be able to control the level of access. Can either of you guys expand on that?
So historically, a lot of device posturing was on connection, right? So for instance,
right.
I want to make sure the firewall is on when you connect, but fine, I've gotten through the front door. Now what happens if I go turn the firewall off? Historically, there wasn't too much that would happen. In this case, if there's a policy or if there's a status change of the endpoint, now we can take something proactive, like maybe turn off access. So it's a trigger-based scan. We can fire off another scan to make sure that we're still meeting the requirements, and then take an action accordingly. So, I think a network change, let's say you went from wired to Wi-Fi, or you turned off the firewall or some agent on the endpoint, these are things we'd look for as a part of that device posturing.
I think the big use case there, Jeremy, is you plug in a USB device while you're in the middle of a session that's already been set up. Right, you've already made that initial connection. EPA scan was already done on connection setup, and now all of a sudden you made a change to that. How do we better and improve that continuous scanning, because that's one of the things about zero trust is you've got to continuously scan and continuously address that access.
Yeah, we have a joke. It's zero trust initial access. Like that's not ZTNA. That is just scanning a device on the way in the front door. Yep.
Yeah, there's an example in the blog article for listeners to go look at that shows as relevant to the USB connectivity and what you could create a policy if a USB storage device is connected during the session versus, like you guys said, if it's already there at the beginning of the session, probably let it in, maybe, depending on policy. The last section in the article is cost savings. The first item is Windows 365 Frontline. This was announced during Microsoft Ignite, where this is supported through the support for Windows 365 that we mentioned earlier on this podcast. Frontline is essentially, I believe this is designed primarily for shift type workers, where they get a license from multiple virtual desktops or multiple cloud PCs under one license. And there's certain parameters in terms of how they can use them, but it's a relatively new licensing model, if you will, for Windows 365. Any comments on this?
So, I mean, like you said, it goes in line with the Windows 365 support. But I guess my question for Windows 365 Frontline, just because I'm still trying to wrap my head around this. So I got it. It's meant for frontline workers. I'm thinking manufacturing. I'm thinking healthcare.
Yep.
And it's connecting to a cloud PC, so to speak. Are all of these users sharing the same cloud PC? Is that kind of the idea? Because that'd be a little bit of a different model with the understanding that cloud PCs traditionally been like sort of a dedicated desktop. But what do you guys know about Frontline at this point?
So it's just that individual PC that allows for a rotation of people to log into it.
Okay. Got it. And so the idea is, if I've got a Frontline PC, am I saying it to a group of folks, or is it just a pooled cloud PC that a certain kind of user, a frontline user, would just pluck and use and off they go?
I don't know.
That's fair.
Yeah, I believe that's the case, Jeremy. I think there's a license assigned. I don't know if it's assigned by the device or by the user, but you're getting I guess what it boils down to is, if you think about a hospital scenario where you've got, let's just make the math simple. You've got 3,000 nursing folks that 1,000 work each shift. You don't want to have to buy 3,000 licenses, because if you did, 2/3 of them wouldn't be used during the day, at least during a shift. So I think Frontline allows you to buy essentially a reduced price license under the expectation that the user is only going to use it a certain amount of time. Each user is only going to use it a certain amount of time from the pool. But I'm not sure whether the individual user is connecting to their own desktop. I think it's probably more of a pooled arrangement. But I'll dig into it a little bit, and we can talk about it in a future podcast.
Got it. So I guess the punchline here is Microsoft is evolving the Windows 365 licensing model with Smidge, and Citrix Day One is supporting that. So if you're a customer looking at Frontline, off you go. We've got support for you.
Here's the reality of this Windows thing for me, Windows 365, this cloud PC. Microsoft knows the most widely used Microsoft application in the world is Windows, and they want that running in Azure, and they want you to become to the point where it becomes a necessity that you have it, and it's in Azure, where it's nice and safe and protected, and where they get the consumption that goes along with it at a fixed fee. I see this as the big grab for Microsoft to get as many of those Windows workloads as possible into Azure in a subscription model, that once a company subscribes to that, they can't get out of it.
Yep.
Sticky.
Exactly. Very sticky. Yes.
Now,
All right, go ahead.
Is that the most cost-effective and the most secure and the most technology advanced way to do it? No. Is it the way a lot of people will go just because it's easy and it's just like buying a PC except it's in the cloud? I think so.
I think you're right.
Now, Citrix's job is to make it more usable and better and relevant. And that's what you guys are doing with this Day One support of all the different things they're coming out with over there.
Yep. Last item here is the cost savings report. This is in tech preview. They talked about this at length at the Connect event, about the capability of being able to visualize and organize savings and track trends and things of that nature. It's going to be in the cloud console, and it'll provide a lot of information about what's being saved, what the customer's saving by leveraging autoscale and other features of Citrix Cloud. You guys want to comment on this? This is a pretty big one that they seem to really emphasize at some of the events.
This is great. Listen, I can't tell you how many times a customer has come to me and said, we're trying to reduce our Azure spend. Got it. And then you roll out Citrix, like, how can I quantify how much Azure spend you're saving? So I do have some tools that I'll leverage with customers where we kind of predict what that looks like. But it's a best guess. I don't know how much you're using. I don't know how you're using it. On some level, I'm trying to gather as much data as I can, but this is actual stats, right? So this is pulling, from what you're using and helping you at the end of the day, take this to your leadership and be able to show exactly how much cost savings and in what capacity you're saving, right? So is it compute, is it storage? There's different areas. I think a lot of customers don't quite understand what constitutes that cloud cost, especially when you're looking at like an AVD solution. So this helps capture what that looks like and how much of it and what areas, and puts it in sort of a format that's easy to communicate back up to leadership, which, being very selfish, is good for me as a Citrix person, because this is what I'm trying to socialize. And now it's right there in the product. So this is a tech preview. It's something we've talked about. Autoscale has been a part of the DAS solution for some time now. So just being able to, maximally use your Azure resource for end user compute. But now we can show you what it looks like, how much you're actually saving.
Yep, absolutely. Any other thoughts on cost savings reporting?
I think that's where, Bill, if we can get engaged with a client, use tools like this, there's value in us being engaged just with this. I mean, should every customer be considering what a move to cloud-based, whether that's Windows 365 or AVD, should they all be considering this? Yes. Is it the right answer for most of them? Probably not. But we need to use our benefits of helping them with the tech and the cost to understand why. And then I don't know, and I haven't read, I guess we're at the end here. I don't know if Azure Local came up in part of this at all, but Todd, Jeremy, you guys know anything about Azure Local and where that's going to fit into this Citrix world?
So
Listen, that's a great question. Will it be supported? Yes. In fact, did we go GA with Azure Stack?
we haven't. It's still in tech preview right now, but it's
Okay.
I mean, Azure Stack is basically the old name for Azure Local.
Right.
And I've got a couple of customers that are looking into Azure Local, Azure Stack as a solution. Both of these customers have come back with some concerns around the hardware or the specific hardware that's required to run Azure Stack. But from Citrix being able to support running the workloads on Azure Stack, absolutely we can do that.
So, I mean, that to me is the answer to the cost saving challenge, potentially. That and multi-session.
Right.
Right.
And even with all that put together, it still may be cost prohibitive to run in public cloud these desktop workloads. But that's where we can help you find that sweet spot for not the entire organization, but for individual groups within the organization, because it's going to make sense sometimes and sometimes it won't.
Yeah.
Right.
And when it doesn't, we can help you build your own, or we can host you in our data center. Lots of options.
So we're at the bottom or at the end of the article and almost out of time. So we managed to get it all in under an hour, guys, which is great. But the last section here, the first sentence, it says we're constantly rolling out new features to help you solve your most pressing IT challenges and address new use cases across your IT environment. We talked about this a little bit at the beginning, the fact that Citrix really is iterating and adding changes based on customer feedback, and doing it at a pretty steady clip. So definitely, I'm enjoying seeing that and seeing all the new features and functionality that comes out on each new release. So kudos to them for continuing to move things forward. Any final thoughts from you guys before we adjourn today?
So it's good to see. I think a lot of customers, and this is the message that we have shared for many years, is these features come to cloud, and there's a perception that a lot of the on-prem product, the CVAD product, is being neglected. Couldn't be further from the truth, right? So there's a significant investment in the on-prem product. Do I think there is some value in the DaaS service? Absolutely. But I also understand a lot of customers, listen, CVAT is a solid platform. There are definitely use cases for it. And for a lot of customers, they're just not ready for that move. And we're here to support you. The licensing tells you that. And I'll tell you the development tells you the same thing.
I would agree with that. And going back to my previous comment a while ago around this being a business, that CVAD is the anchor product within the platform that as long as it stays viable and valuable, Citrix continues to add on to that, the capabilities of it and the pieces that go in with it, then Citrix going to be relevant for a long time.
Yes, sir. Any final thoughts before we adjourn for the day, gentlemen?
I'm good. Thanks, Bill.
I'm good.
All
I'm
right.
good. Thanks,
Yeah.
Bill.
Thank you, guys.
Great seeing you guys.
See you next
All
week.
right. See you guys.